Hey, how's it going? I'm Chris De Silva, and I'm going to use today's video to talk about a question that comes up quite a bit, and that's is a coding bootcamp worth it? I think that it's important to get a lot of different experiences. I don't think there is any one right answer. It varies so much by person, I think looking at this video and taking what you will from it, just use it as part of a bigger picture. So with that said, I did go to a coding boot camp. I was a teacher for 8 years and then made the transition and am now a front end developer full time, and was able to make that jump through a coding boot camp. And so, with that in mind, a couple of things to consider. I think number one of the benefits that a coding boot camp can provide is structure and accountability. So when you're in a classroom, whether virtual or in person, there are instructors, there are classmates, there are other people there that are holding you accountable, whether it's intentionally checking in on you or just that kind of like underlying pressure of like, oh man, like I better show up and put in the work, otherwise everybody else is gonna be pulling ahead and I'm gonna be stuck and lost. I think the structure is another big piece. um, there are tons of resources out there, tons of great videos, tons of great books and people that are willing to give up their time to teach people how to code, which is awesome. Sometimes it can be tough to kind of sift through all that noise and figure out where to start. I will say that that is something that I think is getting a little bit better. I think of people like Brad Traversy on his YouTube channel, Wes Boss, Scott Talinsky, um, lots of great the Net Ninja, Maximilian Schwarzmüller, um, lots of really good folks out there, and those are just a handful of people that are putting together courses, whether they're for free on YouTube or putting them up on Udemy or their own websites, structured things in a way that are really clean and concise and clear. And so that's one potential workaround. But I do think that boot camps offer both accountability and structure. Something else to consider when you're asking yourself that question, is it worth it to go to a boot camp? Think about the investment of money. So that's a big thing. Some boot camps have payment options. Maybe you're able to save up money, but it is definitely a big financial investment in a lot of cases. And so, you just got to kind of sit down and do a little bit of math. Nothing is going to work out perfectly, but if you think, maybe I make 40, $50,000 and after a boot camp, say it cost me 10, 15K to put myself through the program and then, a couple months of job hunting. And then afterwards, now I'm making 60 or 70, depending on what that difference is, the financial benefit can certainly be worth it. So I mentioned that I was a teacher, and for me, there was definitely kind of a ceiling for what I could earn. I could certainly do well and make a good living, but it's a lot different in having a coding job, and being able to be a little bit more financially mobile. And so, if that's something that's important to you, then, short term, sure, coming up with that money is going to be tough, potentially, but long term, it seems like it would pay off. Another thing to keep in mind is, is it worth it from a time perspective? So, you have different programs that maybe offer part-time classes. I went to a program that was twice a week, in the evenings, and it lasted about 9 months. And so that was something where I could still teach during the day. I didn't have to stress as much about like where is my paycheck coming from, and then still go to classes. That was definitely tough to handle. Lots of late nights, and it is a really big sacrifice. And so If you're going to a program that requires you to be at a given location or to show up for class online at a certain time, um, it is a little bit more inflexible. You are working on the boot camp's schedule, and so definitely something to consider. Do you have that time? Do you have that energy to put in? Because you really need to make it count every time you're showing up. I think especially when you're first learning how to code, and even part of the way through your program, it's really about getting reps in and getting as much practice as you can. Especially now, like as a full time developer, like I'm learning new stuff pretty much every day, and it's all because that's what I'm doing full time, and so you do need to be able to treat it like a full time job. Even though I was going to class 2 times a week, I was still coding every single day. If I was just relying on those 2 classes every week, I wouldn't have gone anywhere. Um, I think one of the other things to consider is, okay, I kind of mentioned it before, but is it worth it to have that boot camp on my resume or in my portfolio? Um, and a lot of boot camps offer really good, like alumni services and job placement. They'll review your resume. They'll give you interview prep, um, and help you network with some other companies. I actually was able to find my first job after teaching actually through a friend that I knew. So I think that I learned a lot of foundational skills through my boot camp. Um, but at the end of the day, it wasn't. I didn't find it necessarily because of my boot camp. I found it because I finished up my program. I kept on practicing that next year while I was still teaching, kept on working on projects, and then just happened to know somebody at the right place, right time. So it can definitely be valuable, but it seems like networking is a really big part of it. And so if the boot camp that you're thinking about has a really good job placement rate, and these are things that you can ask your admissions advisors about. Job placement rate. Talk to them about what kind of job prep that they offer and what kind of support. Those are definitely some things to consider, but there are certainly plenty of people that have been able to do it on their own without a boot camp and still made that transition. But as I said, some of the benefits of the boot camp being accountability, structure, these alumni network services that I mentioned, things like that. That's what you're paying for. So I think the alternative, if you're trying to go the self-taught route, and maybe a boot camp just like isn't worth that money and that time investment. If you're going to make a transition, you're definitely going to have to put in time. So you might be saving yourself a few bucks, and that's totally uh, that's totally doable for people. It also requires that you're putting in time every single day, getting better, and showing that you've got the chops to write code at a professional level. Um, Companies are going to want to see projects. They're going to want to see your portfolio. They're going to potentially want to see you, solve problems on a whiteboard or whatever the interview process is. And so these are things that you're going to have to carve out for yourself. So if you're not going the boot camp route, think about things like how can what is my learning path? Am I going into web dev, then getting my HTML and CSS up to speed, and then learning some JavaScript and going from there? If you're going the data science route, maybe you look into learning Python first, and you can move on as you see fit. So definitely lots of resources. It just requires a little bit more front loading on your end, and maybe coming up with like a syllabus for yourself. Definitely set some goals on what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and kind of backwards plan and set a roadmap for yourself. So all that said, For me, I think the coding bootcamp experience was definitely valuable. And if I were to do it over again, I think that I would choose to go through boot camp, getting that that in person, somebody who's been there before, that help and that structure and accountability was definitely valuable to me, and was certainly worth the time commitment and the financial investment. So if you got any questions or want to know more about my experience, feel free to ask questions in the comments. And like I said, definitely do your research. So looking at things like career karma or course report or CIRR, CIRR is the Council on Integrity and Results Reporting. So it's kind of an agency that at the time of this recording is helpful in kind of getting a broad overview of some of the results that boot camps are getting for students. So these are just a couple things to check out, and I definitely recommend that you do. Um, and that's it for today. So thanks a lot for watching. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and give the channel a subscribe, and I will see you next time.